Huntsville is an attractive town, but with two parallel sides. The two sides coexist. One side is a charming university town. The other side is linked to death. By this, I mean Texas death row, for Huntsville is the execution capital of the United States. In this innocent-looking town, all Texas death row inmates are executed. My daughter Victoria and I are leaving Houston, Texas, and we're on our way to Huntsville, Texas, which is an hour's drive from Houston, because the execution of Mark Stroman, the so-called 9/11 revenge killer, will take place today in Huntsville at 6 p.m.
Last name is Carlson. That's Karlsson.
Yes, this one.
What, this one? Right. Hope it works first shot.
You should do it now.
Why you do that?
Leave it in.
Oh, right, you leave it in. Okay, that's okay. Right. Shall we freshen up and then go and have lunch?
Exactly.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Do you know what cilantro is?
What's that?
What's cilantro? You don't know?
No idea. So this is Huntsville.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, right, it's almost disappointing because there's nothing sinister about it. Right, okay, are you hungry?
You see, 8 at 8.
It's the stop at execution, so we'll go over there.
This is the Wars Unit prison. Mark Stroman is here, waiting to die. Now, Stroman killed someone after 9/11 who looked Muslim as revenge. I'm told Stroman turned to Jesus Christ in prison, and he's sorry about his crime, but doesn't fear dying today.
Here I am now outside the Wars Unit, the Death Unit, and Mark Stroman, that I actually just saw just this morning. I waved at him. A good friend of someone I'm in correspondence with, also on death row, and it's just astonishing to think that just behind here now, he's probably strapped to a gurney, about to die. You know, it's it's a wonderful day. I mean, look around you, it's wonderful, gorgeous, sunshine, and in the midst of all this, death.
The last I heard was there were 2 hours left,
Yes.
and that there were some judges talking about it. I visited a man, and I won't call his name, at Polunsky, and no one could visit with him without realizing that he's a very valuable person,
Yes,
and he should not be killed.
No.
Forgiveness is the aberration here, and compassion is the thing that's being questioned.
Absolutely.
That's wrong. It's backwards. We're giving permission to violence and destruction and hatred.
Hopefully
I'm going to have a quick word with Rick Halperin, a leading US anti-death penalty activist and a former chair of Amnesty USA. He's here and he wants to stop Stroman's execution from happening tonight.
Their job in this state, the people who work in this building, they have one job when it comes to this, and that is to kill people. Their job is not to do justice, and their job is not to bring about a new moral imperative in this state. Their job is to kill 326 condemned people. That's their job, and I'm painfully sad to say they're good at it. We've killed 471 people to date. They're good at what they do, but that's their job. Their job has nothing to do with justice. Their job is to liquidate people in the name of the law and to say Mark Stroman is dead and whoever else comes after him. That's their job. It doesn't matter how poor this state is, what financial crisis it's in. This state is hell-bent committed to expend whatever it takes to kill these people. On issues of human rights in general and the death penalty in particular, this state is a hate state. It has no moral leadership, Democrats, Republicans, males, females. This is a culture of killing in Texas. It's sociological, it's historical, it's who we are. It's who we are. It should give anybody with a conscience in this state or in this country serious pause to come to grips with what the hell is happening behind those walls in this building and what has happened 472 times.
Because it's difficult coping with death.
We've been here a couple of hours. It's now past 7:30. Stroman is alive and has still not been executed. This is because we haven't heard from the Supreme Court. The execution cannot go ahead without the permission of the Supreme Court. Here's Mark Dowd. He's with the BBC and is a Stroman supporter.
I've not seen Mark for 7.5 years until I saw him on Monday morning. I came in 2003 and interviewed him for the BBC. The Mark I met then was still angry, still very agitated, still very restless, still full of the memories of what he'd done, although there were signs even then that he was beginning to, feel remorse. But the Mark I've met 7.5 years later is someone who's much more at peace with himself. I think he feels that he's been forgiven by God, and clearly Race's action of forgiveness and his lawsuit to try and stop this process is something that's touched him hugely. I mean, people get very cynical about these guys on death row. They say they're very manipulative and they're kind of people who can fool you. But this man, Mark Stroman, would have to be the most brilliant actor in the world, I think, to be going through what he's doing if he's not genuine. And I think he is genuine.
And how did you feel when, because I saw someone who was with you, she was actually crying and you were comforting her.
Yeah.
How are you coping?
Well, the strange thing is there's been an odd correspondence because as I said, I haven't seen him for 8 years. But yet, in a strange way, in the last decade of my life has been like a decade of death. I've lost both my parents, I've lost my elder brother, and I've related a lot of these things to Mark, knowing that he was on death row and so close to death himself. So, in a strange way, on the one hand, he's a complete stranger. But on the other hand, he's somebody I've been able to open up to in these correspondences. So, I'm a religious person. I believe that death is not the final word. I don't think you can extinguish the human spirit, even when our bodies die. And Mark and I, we prayed together this morning. We exchanged many thoughts on what happens beyond death. So, the only time I've been upset in the last few days is when I woke up yesterday morning at 5 o'clock in the morning and I heard this rooster and the trees blowing in the wind, and I thought, I can't believe that on Thursday morning these things will still have life, but Mark may not.
Jim Willard, a former warden of death row who has personally attended 89 executions, explains part of the process.
Once they get in, I would tell the inmate that he could make a statement. Most of them made a statement. I'm going to guess maybe 70-75% of the people made a last statement.
Many Huntsville residents work for the prison system that executes all Texas death row inmates. Jim Willett himself lives in Huntsville and briefly shares his thoughts on his somewhat unusual job.
Well, I looked at it a lot as the job that I had, and let's just narrow it down to being the one to tell the executioner to do what he had to do. I looked at that job as being a cog in a wheel. There's a big wheel that's got a bunch of cogs that causes all this to happen. And personally, in some ways, I thought that probably someone on a jury for a capital murder had a harder job than I did, because they're the ones that has to say, I vote not only for this man as guilty, but to get the death penalty. To me, that would just, my way of looking at it, would be harder than what I had to do.
The Supreme Court have just telephoned with a decision about Mark Stroman's fate. Will Mark Stroman die tonight or not?
Well, I can hear crying and wailing in the background, and we've been here for a few hours now, and it looks as if the execution is actually going to go through.
We found out just 5 minutes ago. We saw the media and the witnesses cross, which means the execution is going ahead. And the worst thing for people here is that we've been waiting for 2.5 hours, and when these things happen, you get hope, you know.
Yeah.
It builds up, and you think, well, maybe not tonight, maybe a stay of execution. And it's the worst possible outcome for people, because as the minutes go by, you think it's not going to happen tonight. It's not going to happen. They're running out of time. And just at the time when they had to do it, it looks like they're doing it. It's going ahead now, probably, as we speak. So, you know, and I feel particularly sorry for the people who are in there now, because I've spent the last 4 or 5 days with them. We've been eating together, we've been crying together, we've been sharing stories. And this guy's going to be like a meter away from them through a glass. This is a country which has put people on the moon, which is at the forefront of so many amazing things, and yet it does this. And coming from Europe, it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense.
Mark Stroman is being put to death. He's being executed right now, as we speak, in the building behind us by lethal injection.
Race asked specifically that you keep both Mark and Race in your prayers. He told me to say to you that we, the collective we did the best we could for as long as we could, and that as disappointing as this isn't the end. And it's a sad day, but it's not the end. And he was just very grateful for all the support of all the people here and around the world who joined his message and found it so appealing. And I would ask if we could have a moment of silence, that we remember those people in this country who were victims of crime, whether they survived or not, families in pain, and that we dedicate ourselves as best we can to the narrative towards which we've been struggling these last weeks, months, and years, so that we don't have to come back here on nights like this for anybody. So I would ask for at least a moment of silence for Race, Mark, and everybody else.
I can't believe I'm crying and am upset because Mark Stroman, a one-time white supremacist, is being executed. It shows that grief has no colour.
It does. It's just terrible. It's just terrible.